It is great to have you all here back with us on Raised on Real Estate. Greg Angello with you on an absolutely gorgeous day here on September 14th. Getting closer to fall time. We know a lot of people are looking for that time, but it is still summertime here in the South. And we've been talking about this now for the last week or two, a little bit more than that. We have a great guest, brand new guest to the platform. He's never been here before. David Atkinson, and he's going to talk to us about this brand new product. He is the CEO and president of zSphere. And David, it is great to have you on the platform. Great to have you here on Raised on Real Estate.
Greg, pleasure to be here. Thanks for having us.
Pleasure to have you, and I appreciate you reaching out to me a little while ago. All of these people that are listening right now, they go, David Atkinson, zSphere. Don't know what zSphere is. So before we get into the nuts and bolts of what you do and all of that, for those that don't know you, I know there are some people out there, especially in LinkedIn and that world, in the real estate world, that know you. Give us a little bit about who you are and where you came from and how did all this evolve?
Yeah, certainly. Thanks, Greg. So I live in the South, a little bit north of Jacksonville, Florida. And as you can tell, I don't have a Southern draw. I am actually from the Midwest, north of Chicago, and was raised, believe it or not, in a family of commercial fishermen and military. So big on Navy, things like that. So a lot of time on the water in my life and in my family. And as you can imagine, the Midwest, was harsh in the winters, and frankly, the best fishing season for us in the Midwest on the Great Lakes was January and February. You can imagine the lakes then are not very hospitable, so was a significant contributor to zSphere and where we are now, just in terms of fundamentally giving me some experience around what it takes to operate in very harsh conditions, whether it's the wind or the cold or the heat or just the waves, whatever it might be. So that's where I'm from. A little bit about my upbringing. I didn't commercially fish my entire life. I chose to go into IT and technology. So I'm one of those enterprise systems guys that's built some of the largest information systems for healthcare, banks, insurance companies around the world, the largest that you can imagine. So tremendous amount of experience, a very broad-based experience for me that's brought me here. I'm an avid entrepreneur. I love to solve problems. And zSphere represents really a culmination in over a decade's worth of work and groundwork in bringing this to market a couple of years ago. And so, a little bit for your audience, a little bit further on zSphere specifically and me as an entrepreneur. So there's not many of us out there, but many entrepreneurs are the type where they went to bed one night and they wake up the next morning or the next day and they have this epiphany and something shows up. And I am living proof of that. I went to bed one evening, I woke up the next day, and the entire anatomy of what zSphere needed to be was in my head. And the next several years just demonstrated to me that this was what I needed to do. It was what I needed to focus on. It was why I was born. And so that's the origins of zSphere. And for your audience that may or may not have been out to our website, our website is myzsphere.com. And in a nutshell, when you think of zSphere, think about insurability and investment protection when it comes to disaster-prone real estate. And when I say that, I'm talking about hurricane-prone areas like the Caribbean or the coastal U.S., whether it's the Gulf of Mexico or the East Coast, Florida, certainly. So we are experts in creating buildings that last a very long time and can be subjected to the harshest of elements and natural disasters, as well as we are also experts in off-grid living.
Mm.
We're seeing a tremendous amount of demand given the geopolitical uncertainties and economy and politics and everything that's going on in the country. We're seeing tremendous amount of demand on the off-grid rural living side of things. So, we're just getting started. We're a couple years we're a late stage startup. So, we've had some, our early funding, our pre-seed and things like that. Now we're moving into those later rounds in maturity. So it's been a great journey thus far, Greg.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to take you back to when you were discussing about 2 years ago or so, when you had this epiphany. What was one of the first things you did? Like, who did you contact or who did you call? Because obviously you probably didn't maybe start this yourself. Maybe you did, but I'm sure you've been around some other people who are, have the same sort of thoughts or concerns about, what happens in these regions when you're impacted by hurricanes and, very difficult climate weather. So, like, what did you do?
Yeah, great question. So, the first thing that I'm going to share with your listeners and entrepreneurs out there, the number one factor in a startup's success is market timing. My partners, my early partners, wanted to go to market. Let's see, we're going on 7 years ago. They wanted to go to market 7 years. And I flat out right told them, I said, the market timing is not right. And so, Greg, I have to give credit to, I'll call it a higher power, divine aspect
Mm,
here, because I've been given guidance the entire way in terms of certain, signposts and everything else as far as when to pull the trigger on going to market, people that are either partners or strategic partners, those kind of things they've presented themselves at just the right times. So, why 2 years ago? It's market timing, period, full stop. It's all about market timing. Before then, it was too early. And then after, if we started now, it'd be too late because we've accomplished a significant amount in just the last couple of years. So,
mm.
but at the end of the day, you ask any one of my core team, there's a handful of us on the core team. You ask any one of them, and they will flat out share with you that there's some higher guidance here just based on all of the collective experiences and that have brought us together and certain resources and people that have been presented over time. But uh, hands down, Greg, market timing most important.
Well, that's a very interesting point. And one of the things that I wrote down while you were talking about that is one of the things that I was actually discussing this morning on our mindset motivation call was conflict resolution, or the way that we discuss things with other people, especially like in my business in real estate, right? Between agents, getting to the end, what our end game is. And so I wrote down the dynamic of the relationship, the makeup, because sometimes I know just through my experience in history that there are people who want to form a company, they want to form a venture, and they can never really get it off the ground. I mean, someone has a really great idea, but they can't move forward because the parties don't agree. It's like they're constantly sitting in a war room trying to battle out, like you said, like, what is the right timing? What does that look like when you have your core people and they all have a stake in basically, the same sort of mindset? You're doing something good, doing something for longevity, for people's lives and sustainable living. And so when you all are thinking that way, and when you have someone says, you know what, David, I don't know if that's a good idea. I don't know if we should go that way. I think we should do it now. How do you resolve those things so that people who are trying to get into a business can work those things out?
Yeah, so great question. So 2 points here, Greg. So first of all, unless you've been in business long enough and been through enough startups and know what it's like to have bad partners, you haven't been at it long enough.
Mm-hmm.
It's bad partners which help you appreciate good partners. And I've been around the block long enough to have had bad partners and know what it looks like. Hey, walks like a duck, quacks like a duck's probably a duck, right? And so there's this process in which you have to go to first of all identify who is compatible, with you. Chemistry is the most important thing to me in terms of our core team members. We all have a similar mindset framework, and can halfway finish each other's sentences, right? It's almost family-ish, which is great. But the second part of that, Greg, is so I'm data driven. So anyone that wants to go out and follow me on LinkedIn, I'm data driven. I'm constantly posting and sharing real data, helping people understand and really dissecting it for them in very simple terms. Hey, here are the implications of these particular data points, these events, these trends, whatever they may be. And so what I've done over many years is I have merely shown my partners the data, and they have come to the irrefutable conclusions 6 ways from Sunday that, yep, David's correct about this. Not that I'm ever wrong, because look, I'm free to admit I don't know what I don't know, but I know enough, and I know a lot. I'm an expert in this area, and my partners have 100% confidence in that leadership and that direction based on the data, the circumstances, and everything that I've laid out. Greg, I was talking about things 5 years ago with my partners, and even longer, even over a decade, 15 years. I've been speaking and I've shared with them, I've planted seeds with them over the years, and the vast majority of those things have come to pass. So the only thing that lends credibility is time. And so, from a partnership perspective, it's important to have many years under your belt with partners, understand how they're made. One thing I was taught very early on in life, I was asked this very unusual question, and I was asked by a mentor of mine, "Hey, Dave, what's the best experience?" And I kind of looked, because I was a young man in my early 20s, and I kind of looked and I said, "I don't know what." And they looked at me and they said, "Bad experience." That's the best experience you could have. And so you're going to have bad experiences, but that helps you figure out what, the right stuff looks like. And not only that, Greg, but to take it, one final step here, championship Super Bowl teams are what they are because there is a chemistry about the way the people, the players work together, the collaboration, the teamwork. It is that communication, it's that natural, connection that makes those teams. And candidly, it's taken me over 10 years to find and have the team members, connect with me over the last 10 plus years. But we've got a Super Bowl team.
Yeah.
And it's one of those things where, yeah, you got the right team, and that's critical in the whole grand scheme of things. And we've also got the right solution at the right time.
Yeah, I really like that. That's very important. And because we talk about that too, especially in our business or whatever business that you're in, because someone that is an entrepreneur like yourself, even for people that want to win the game, there has to be inside them that desire, right? It's like you can bring anybody, you can tell anybody about how this is going to work or this is what you're going to do to get where you want to go. But if you don't have that desire, because you can't teach that. You can't talk about desire in a boardroom. You can lay down all the statistics and all the data, and like you said, the data points. But if there's not the desire to do it, then it's going to be an issue. Because if you talk about some of the things about past experiences or bad experiences, that's kind of like failures, right? Because people who continually move forward and want to try are going to have failures. And you probably know this yourself, David, is that, like Thomas Edison, right? Like how many times did he fail before he actually produced what he wanted to produce with the light bulb? I mean, there was over 1,000 times that he's failed before, but he never gave up. So
The epitome of tenacity. Yes.
absolutely. So that people that are listening right now, they're going, okay, this is all cool. I really like the way that this is going. If you just met somebody today, you're standing at the street corner, you're standing at the bus stop, and you introduce yourself and you tell them who you are and you tell them about Z-Sphere, what would you say to them so they can understand what it is that you're doing?
Yeah. So Greg, in a nutshell, we create insurability and investment protection for real estate in disaster prone areas. It can be hurricanes, floods, earthquakes, fires, whatever it may be. That's what we do. And it's a chronic problem today. So we have building methodologies and utility systems and things like that that make real estate in those areas livable, and we protect the assets of our clients that invest in those areas.
When you created this environment or this the way that you would build this structure and everything inside of it that's sustainable, right? Like you talked about, that has portable water,
Yes,
solar
yes,
power, wind
yes.
power, or gray water treatment and more. So you probably had to test this first, right? You had to put it to market. And so what was that like when you said, you know what, we're going to build our first one, we're going to see if it's going to work?
Yeah, so our first production unit is actually under construction here in Southeast Georgia right now. I'm actually looking at it out my window. And so the beautiful thing about everything that we're, for the most part, everything that we're doing, Greg, is a lot of what we're doing is has been proven for decades, right? So there's nothing to reinvent. What we've done is some very, very special things around the formulas of construction design coupled with real sustainability and real you've got to have the right components in place in order to get true sustainability. And let me explain just a little sidebar here. So in order for you to live 100% off grid, you have to be able to create or generate in excess of the resources that you need to live 24/7, 365, right? Whether it is water or power, whatever it may be. Okay. So the chronic problem that's plaguing our building systems, and it's not just the United States, it's Western culture in general. So the chronic problem that we're facing is that we have built our infrastructure, our buildings, we have built them incredibly inefficiently because we had excess access to energy and cheap energy, et cetera. It didn't force us to build in an incredibly efficient way, right? Everybody is now realizing this, whether you're in the UK or France or elsewhere, their power bills are going up 2, 3x, right? Because the energy costs are going up, but these buildings are so energy efficient, they consume a lot of energy.
Mhm.
So one of the problems, and this is a foundational problem, because you can't take solar and wind and just plop it on a house and have an off-grid building. It doesn't work that way. It's a system. So we've taken a systems approach and we figured out. I'm a complex systems expert, so I figured out all the critical variables in that equation that makes it truly sustainable. And one of the critical variables in that, Greg, is your power consumption, your profile, your power profile. And what we've done at zSphere is we have reduced that power profile, that demand profile, down to a fraction of what a conventional building uses in terms of power. And so what that's done is that's provided us the platform in which to use conventional solar and a unique wind system that we've made, as well as some other conventional solutions that actually get us to that true off-grid sustainable path.
So one of the things I wrote down when you're describing this here is that for me, it's like who's going to fit into it, right? That's one thing you have to think about when you're building, say you're building a box. So you have to figure out who's going to fit in the box.
Yes.
Who is your This is sort of like, an obvious understanding because if you're building these along the coastlines where there's hurricanes or typhoons and all of these things, so it's to protect people from the environment. But who is the customer? Who is your customer base? Who are the ones that you are attracting that are going to say, yeah, this is for me. This is what I want. Or is it just something that they just go into? How does that work out?
Yeah, great question. So here's what we found in our several years of research on the ground work in the Caribbean, here in the Southeast, speaking with hundreds of prospective clients and partners, et cetera. So our ideal client, certainly right now, it's going to evolve over time, but our ideal client right now is someone that has, let's say, a couple of acres of property in the Caribbean or on, in the coastal US. They've got a couple of acres of property. They want to monetize that property, but they're either afraid of making the investment, that they're not going to be able to get the turn on their investment, because of a threat from hurricanes. Maybe you haven't had one in 5 years and you're due for a hurricane, that kind of thing. And so what we're doing is our first contracts, we're very near to contracts that we're going to deliver on in 2023, specifically in Puerto Rico. That's where we're going first because they're the poster child for zSphere. But our ideal early customers are, you got a couple of acres, really nice place. So from a hospitality perspective, it's an ideal place to have an Airbnb, those type of things. The minimum order that we'll do is for 5 units, because it doesn't make sense for us to sell individual units in existing subdivisions or anything like that, because we are, quite a departure from traditional, architecture and buildings. We're looking to the younger generations, the Gen Z and younger. We do have some baby boomers that understand the economics of it, and they merely want to put 5 or 6 Airbnbs on a property, know that they're going to have investment protection. But even further, past that, Greg, the more important thing is the fact that we provide our clients a level of continuity of cash flow and non-disruption when a hurricane comes. Right? Biggest problem with conventional buildings where they're hospitality, the greatest problem they face is when a hurricane comes, the infrastructure goes down for weeks or months,
Correct.
right?
Mm-hmm.
Power, water, whatever it may be. And so that property is dead, right? It's not generating any cash flow for you. In fact, it's a burden. It's probably got damage in it. You've got to spend money on repairing water damage, whatever it might be. So what we do for our clients is we provide them investment protection. We keep the water out. We're a watertight building. So when those hurricanes, the wind-driven rains, the floods, everything come, when that happens, we keep the water out. We keep our clients and contents safe. And we also provide them continuity of those essential services so that they can maintain, they can keep the open sign on that Airbnb and have minimal, if not very limited cash flow disruption. And so that's a key factor in our early clients, and it will just become more and more recognized as we get further and further into the marketplace.
Okay, because I think that the other thing that came to my mind here is that acceptance. Something comes new to market, not everyone accepts something that you're bringing. So there's conversations that you have to have. And one of these few things I wrote down is, because you talked about that Puerto Rico is like the staple child for zSphere. So who do you contact to make the presentation that we're going to build the sustainable building structure in your backyard? And so you've got local governments, and especially people in these different municipalities that maybe don't operate like they do in the United States or understand what that means. So what does that entail when you're saying we've got a great product that's going to do this, and how do you win them over to say we want to do it here?
Yeah, and so Greg, this is if there was one piece of advice that I had to share with anybody next to market timing, it's all about your network. It's all about who you're talking to. It's all about your reach, the number of people you're speaking with, et cetera. Our early contracts are developers or private landowners that we either know personally in our network or through, one degree of separation and whatever else. They've come to understand our solution over the last few years. We've educated them. We've collaborated with them. We've walked properties. We've shown them and helped them understand the zSphere value proposition as it relates for, what they want to do, right? These are typically real estate developers, private landowners. So people that want to monetize a property. The Airbnb angle is very important because Airbnb has categories of unique experiences. And the zSphere, we expect to be, because of other similar similar offerings that they have out there, similar venues, we expect ours to be one of those very unique, um, with a light shining on it. Hey, this is a unique experience. You want to go check this out, kind of thing. It's going to be a draw for our early Airbnb, customers. And so that's an important aspect of it too. To touch on the municipalities, we've spoken with dozens of municipalities down in Puerto Rico, and it's taken all of those discussions to really narrow it down to five or six or more that understand our value proposition and frankly have gone through enough pain recently with hurricanes and disruption to their economies and their constituents, where we've developed specific projects and specific packaging around emergency command centers, sustainable and resilient warehousing, things like that, that are going to provide them with a platform where they can better serve their constituents immediately after a disaster and certainly during for emergency, triage, whatever it may be.
That is very, very interesting because there's a number of different things that take place besides the platform, like Airbnb being the platform, which would maybe be a great platform. Maybe there'll be an area just on that alone that people can click on for that. But for all the other things that are going on in the environment of that structure, you have to have different suppliers, right? I mean, you're not creating solar panels. You're now working with all these different, if you want to call them vendors now, and you have to get them on board as well because they're going to say, okay, well, if you're going to build this, then it's going to have to work. So you have sort of like this huge structural engineering issue going on. You've collaborative effort, I believe, to show that when all of the components are together, this is how it's going to function and its longevity. What is some of the sticking points with these vendors in getting them to come in? I mean, obviously you have to build the structure a certain way, otherwise it won't work, right?
Yes, certainly. So most of our relationships are multi-year endeavors. Um, we're very selective in our partners, um, for a couple of reasons, right? We're big on made in the USA. We're also very, very knowledgeable of the energy industry and some of the very real challenges that we have coming to our power grid and otherwise. And so we understand geopolitics, we understand trade, we understand how all those systems work. And so we've gone to great lengths to work with and identify partners that have limited exposure to the very complex supply chain issues that we're facing today. Many of our suppliers are made in the USA exclusively, whether it is a solar panel provider or a lightweight, phenolic resins and composites provider, 100% in the US, right? Sourced, manufacturer, made in the USA.
Mm.
So that's a focus of ours, and really lends itself to, not that we're not going to have issues in supply chain. Everybody's going to have issues in supply chain. We're just doing everything possible to try and minimize any sort of disruption here, in the future.
Okay.
Great question.
So then cost is probably going to be an issue because I think that's fantastic, right? Having here in the USA supply the means and the material and all of that as well. So there's obviously you've got a budget to figure out when you put it out the market that it's going to be affordable, or, well, I don't know if I want to use that word affordable, but that it's not going to be something that only a certain category of people can afford, like, a billionaire can afford to buy it. So the cost is important, right? How do you work that out as far as trying to table your costs and expenses for value when you bring it to market on the price tag?
Yeah, so to give your audience just a general sense, right? So we have three size units, and we've targeted very specific markets with our three size units. So we have a 20-foot unit that's, between 500 and 600 square feet. That's really intended to go after the tiny home market. We are in the process of collaborating closely with the tiny home associations, the top tiny home associations across the country. They've got a lot of challenges around, HUD and regulations, things like that. The fact that we're fully IBC compliant is meaningful to them. So we're collaborating with them there as far as addressing that market. We require a very small footprint of space, so we're very conducive to that market. But then we have our 30 footer. That's about 1,000 square feet. It's really ideal for, a small family, 4 to 5 people. And when you look at places like the Caribbean, the coastal US, et cetera, you're talking about on average, 800, 900, 1,000 square feet, per residence, and 3, 4 people in a household. So that's really a good sweet spot for us, especially as we get into the Caribbean in volume. And then we've got a larger unit, a 50 footer. We service residential, hospitality, municipal, and commercial needs. So we address the plethora of real estate needs in those disaster prone regions, with the exception of warehousing and industry, just because of the nature of the shape of our building. But at the end of the day, our entry level price is 250,000. That's an installed price. We're not publishing pricing yet because we've still got so much volatility in manufacturing and in materials, et cetera. The steel prices have come way down from where they were as little as 2-3 months ago. So we're taking a very close pulse before we finally publish pricing. But the long and the short of it is, Greg, is that we are absolutely affordable. We fit right into current affordability spectrums for buyers that are out there. I led off the conversation talking about insurability. One of the very important things to us is we must have an insurable structure, because that's the only way you're going to get a mortgage on it and finance it, right? They will not mortgage something without an insurance policy. Mm-hmm. So very important to us. And, the other thing to keep in mind is, our first 20 to 25 units are going to be the most expensive we ever build. As soon as we get a factory built in late 2023, 2024, the way that we're tracking now, our volumes, we're going to move into several hundred and then quickly 1,000 units per year. Our per unit cost will come down dramatically. There's a philanthropic angle and bent in our team. We're very philanthropic. We understand that there's a tremendous amount of people, especially in the Caribbean, that are in the very low income scale. Very important to us to get our volumes to a point where we can take that affordability in that 20 footer for very, very basic essential services and needs, and provide those low income clients not only something that's going to last them for generations, but something that's going to create legitimate affordability for them. Right? Because now a hurricane comes through, it literally wipes them out. It wipes out their home, their belongings, everything, right? And then they're a ward of the state effectively. Mm-hmm. So what we're doing is we're creating an environment and a platform for, a level of resiliency and I'll call it independence, but a level of autonomy such that all that burden is not thrown on state and local governments, because frankly, they've got their hands full with a lot of other things, and they're going to better serve their constituents by being able to focus on those bigger picture items instead of those very basic essential needs.
It's good. A few more minutes here, and then we're going to wrap it up, because one of the things that I was thinking about when you were talking about the impact for those areas. So when somebody comes in there, well, let me back that up. Let's just say that the structures are up there, it's in a community, and there's 5 of them there, and there is no impact, there's no environmental situation, there's no hurricane or something like that. So people are going in there as what? Just to experience the experience? Or are they only going to be used when there is a disaster for people to live in? Because what happens if their whole entire year goes by and no environmental issue?
Yeah. So number one, Greg, these are permanent structures. They are intended to be lived in 24/7, 365. They are not intended. We will have clients that want to use them as a dedicated shelter, but they are designed and being offered and structured as permanent living structures, okay, as well as commercial buildings for small businesses, whether you're a restaurant or a doctor or dentist, whatever it may be. We're the ideal commercial building because what is needed immediately after a disaster, right? If your local dentist doesn't have power to his office, he's not going to be able to do a whole lot for you. But if you have a doctor or dentist that does have a working office, guess what? They're going to be, you know, they're going to be the highest trafficked, businesses after disaster because they're still up and running. So we bring a unique competitive advantage, not only from a business perspective, but certainly from a municipal one, and then even from a personal one. It's a much different scenario where after a hurricane, um, you're wiped out. You don't have a house, you don't have water, you don't have power, anything else. You know, you're a mercy to everything exterior to your world. Versus if you're one of our clients and you have our fully off-grid system, after the event, you've got your water, you got your power, you've got shelter, you've got all those things, and you've preserved, your belongings, your sentimental things, etc. The first thing on your mind when you open that door and walk out of your sphere after that natural disaster, the first thing you're thinking about is how can I help other people get back to normal?
Hmm.
Totally different mindset.
Right. All right. So, with all of this going on that you have, what do you see? Where do you see zSphere in, like, say, the next 3 to 5 years? Where do you see it going? And what challenges, what are some of the biggest challenges that you're dealing with? If it's government regulations or it's environmental regulations, those two to wrap up what we got going on this afternoon with you.
Yeah, so the next few years, we're going to demonstrate and create an entirely new baseline and standard of building in places like the Caribbean. Everyone is going to aspire to build to the new standard that we've created in terms of service continuity and investment protection. The other thing is, so Greg, I apologize. Can you repeat the second part? I want to get it. I want to get it just right. The second part of your question.
What are some
You
of
had you
your
had
biggest, right, your biggest
Yeah,
challenges that you're
yeah,
dealing?
biggest hurdles. Yeah, biggest hurdles. Thank you. So yeah, some of our biggest hurdles are the inability or the difficulty in human beings to change.
Mm. Okay.
And let me give you an example. So right now in the Caribbean, all the buzz and all the talk is about conventional approaches to solving an extremely complex problem. And we don't foresee those. I definitively guarantee you that those conventional solutions will fail and they don't have longevity or investment protection associated with them for providing the Caribbean a real future, right? A real sustainable future. And so our greatest challenge and barrier is continually embracing conventionality and not, looking outside the box, not being able to think outside the box when it comes to things of this importance. The climate is changing, it's changing radically, whether it's man-made or not, inarguably changing radically. And so it's up to us to create systems that truly have a viable future, and zSphere represents one of those.
Well, that's awesome. I would totally agree with you because change is difficult, right? The way we live, and but yet things are changing, right? Our environment is changing. So how do you adapt and how do you move in that direction so that we can continue to live and sustain? So those that are listening right now, we're going to wrap things up with David here. We're limited time, but for those that are listening, really appreciate all of you being here. For those that are out there that want to get a hold of you, like, man, this is just awesome. I want to find out more about it. How can I get involved? Is your company growing? Maybe I'm an investor and I want to reach out to you. How do people get a hold of you?
Yeah, thanks, Greg. So the best way to get a hold of us is certainly via our website. We've got a contact form on the website. It's myzsphere.com. So MY, the letter Z, and the word sphere as in roundsphere.com. You can also contact me on LinkedIn. Feel free to connect, message, follow me on LinkedIn. You're going to learn quite a bit, and I inject some humor into my posts on a regular basis, so I think you'll enjoy that as well. And then lastly, I'm one of those CEOs that loves constant, interaction, new introductions. My email address is david@myzsphere.com. Feel free to reach out to me directly. And yeah, if you're an investor, if you're a potential client based on what I've shared today, please don't hesitate to reach out to us. We've got an active offering right now for accredited investors. We're out in the marketplace raising 50 million and would love to talk to you. If you're an accredited investor, don't hesitate to send me an email.
That's great. Awesome. Anything else before we wrap it up you've got?
No, Greg, other than, just your audience, hey, hang in there, be safe. The world's changing radically. A lot of curveballs are going to be thrown at us. Be sure that you're taking a look at solutions, legitimate solutions, giving them the time of day, because it's solutions like that that are going to get us over these tough times ahead. Don't discredit or discount them. Look into them and figure out what they're made of and what the people are made of behind them. And it's, myself and other entrepreneurs greatly appreciate that consideration. So thank you.
Well,
and thanks again, Greg.
You're welcome. We appreciate you. And I think that from people who step into this zone, into this, entrepreneurial zone, it's creating a solution to a problem that many people can't solve. And that's not easy to do. And so we wish you the best. I really do. I want to stay focused with you and stay in contact. Let us know how you're doing. I'd love to have you back again. Give us updates, whether or not it's 6 months or a year from now. And who knows, maybe in 3 to 5 years or so, you might be talking about an IPO, right? Going to market.
Absolutely.
All right.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you again. David Atkinson with zSphere. The website is myzsphere.com. We'll have that up on the platform for you. We use Buzzsprout as our host company, but all the other platforms for Raised on Real Estate is there with Spotify and iHeartRadio. We'll have all of that information up there. We'll also have some more information that David will give us through his website that we can put up there, so you'll have maybe a more clear vision. David, I know you're ready to run out the door, but thank you for being here, and you've been a great guest, and you're welcome back anytime. Thank you very much.
Thanks again for having me, Greg.
All right, awesome. All of you out there, hope you enjoyed this one. I think this is a fantastic conversation piece, and to see it develop and going into the future where we're headed. We're going to stay on top of this as well. We thank you for being part of our community and helping us grow. For Raised on Real Estate, Greg Angello, be kind to one another, love one another, and watch out for one another. Take care.